Warning, human war vessel has breached the sector. The announcement blared through the Galactic Council Station Epsilon, causing the various alien species to freeze in terror. Admiral Krell of the Deltarian Empire, a tall, blue-scaled humanoid, slammed his fist on the command console. "How did they get past our defense grid?" he demanded, his dorsal spines flaring with agitation. "Unknown, Admiral," replied Lieutenant Nexus, her multiple eyes blinking rapidly. "The vessel appeared without warning at the edge of our sensor range. It's approaching at incredible speed." The gathered representatives of the Galactic Coalition, 27 species that had maintained peace for centuries, erupted in panic. Only 10 standard cycles ago, they had voted to quarantine the Sol system after discovering humanity's violent tendencies. The humans had been deemed too dangerous to join galactic society, their history littered with endless warfare and their entertainment glorifying combat. "Silence," commanded High Counselor Vex, the oldest member of the ruling body. The ancient crystalline being's voice resonated through the chamber. "We must maintain order. What are the specifications of this human vessel?" The tactical officer, a small gray being named Plex, brought up a holographic display. "The ship is unlike anything in our database. It's approximately 1/3 the size of our largest warships, but giving off energy signatures that suggest weapons capabilities far beyond its apparent mass," Admiral Krell hissed. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated humans were at least 50 years away from developing interstellar travel." "Evidently, our intelligence was flawed," Vex replied dryly. The station's communications officer suddenly straightened. "We're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." The central viewing screen flickered to life. A human male appeared, dressed in a dark uniform adorned with simple insignia. His face was weathered but calm. Behind him stood a bridge crew, of mixed genders, all focused intently on their tasks. "This is Captain Tom Reed of the Earthship Retribution. We know you've been watching us. We know about the quarantine you placed on our system." His voice was steady, neither threatening nor submissive. "We're here to negotiate terms." Krell bristled. "There are no terms to negotiate, human. Return to your system immediately, or face destruction." A small smile crossed Reed's face. "I wouldn't recommend that course of action, Admiral. While we're transmitting, several other human vessels have already entered this sector through different vectors. They're currently holding position near key Coalition worlds." Plex frantically worked his console, then looked up in shock. "He's telling the truth. We've detected 7 additional human warships throughout Coalition space." "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor Zrin, a representative of the methane-breathing Quilorians. "Our defense systems are the most advanced in the galaxy." Reed's expression remained neutral. "Your defenses are impressive, but they rely on predictable patterns. Humans excel at finding patterns and exploiting them." Vex moved forward. "What is it you want, Captain Reed?" "Simple. The quarantine ends today. Earth joins the Galactic Coalition as a full member. In exchange, we share our technological advances." Admiral Krell laughed bitterly. "You threaten us and expect us to welcome you?" "Not a threat, Admiral," Reed replied. "A demonstration. Humans don't take kindly to being caged. We could have attacked, without warning, but that's not our way. We prefer diplomacy when possible. War only when necessary." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. A species they had dismissed as primitive had not only broken through their most advanced defenses but had done so with apparent ease. "You have one standard day to consider," Reed continued. "We'll maintain our current positions until then. Read out." As the transmission ended, the council members looked at each other in stunned silence. The humans had not just reached the stars, they had mastered them, and the galaxy would never be the same. High Counselor Vex called an emergency session as reports flooded in from across Coalition space. The human vessels had positioned themselves with tactical precision, each one near a critical strategic location, but maintaining a non-aggressive stance. "This is unprecedented," muttered Counselor Trell, the mantis-like representative of the Xyloth Dominion. "Their ships appear to be using some form of stealth technology that renders them nearly invisible to our standard detection methods." Admiral Krell paced the chamber floor, his scales shifting color with stress. "Our military analysis suggests these human vessels, despite their relatively small size, carry weapon systems capable of significant damage. What's most concerning is that we can't identify their propulsion method. They seem to be using some kind of space-folding technology we've only theorized about. The Coalition's leading xenopsychologist, Dr. Lorne, floated forward on his gravity pad. We've clearly underestimated humanity. Our studies of their transmissions suggested they were still bound by primitive rocket propulsion and nuclear fission. This leap in technology is alarming. Perhaps, Vex interjected, we have been studying the wrong transmissions. They may have been deliberately broadcasting outdated information. On the station's observation deck, Lieutenant Nexus was engaged in an unauthorized communication with the human vessel. Her curiosity had overcome protocol, a trait her species was known for. "Your ships," she asked the human communications officer, a woman named Diane. "How did they advance so quickly?" Diane smiled. "Necessity, Lieutenant. When we detected your probes studying Earth several decades ago, we realized we weren't alone. Then we intercepted communications about the quarantine vote. Humans work best under pressure. United by a common threat or opportunity, we can accomplish remarkable things." Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on. "We cannot allow ourselves to be blackmailed," Admiral Krell declared. "If we concede to these humans now, what's to stop other quarantined species from following their example?" Counselor Zrin's translator emitted a series of clicks before converting to standard speech. "Perhaps we should consider that our quarantine policy itself is flawed. We judged humanity based on their past, not their potential." Captain Reed had been granted permission to board the station, accompanied by 2 officers, Commander Jake Wilson, his tactical officer, and Dr. Maya Patel, xenobiologist. They waited in the antechamber while the council deliberated. "They're scared," Wilson observed quietly. Reed nodded. "As they should be. Not because we pose a threat, but because we've shattered their worldview. They believed they were the pinnacle of technological advancement. That's the problem with complacency," Dr. Patel added. "The Coalition has had peace for so long they've forgotten how innovation often springs from conflict and challenge." Inside the chamber, Vex was reviewing historical data. "I've been studying human history more closely. Yes, they've had wars, but they've also created art, music, literature, celebrating peace. Their species contains multitudes, warriors and healers, destroyers and creators. Their advancement curve is unlike anything we've seen," Dr. Lorne admitted. "Most species develop technology gradually. Humans seem to progress in dramatic leaps, especially when threatened." The station's tactical officer interrupted with an urgent report. "We've analyzed the human vessels more thoroughly. Each appears to be equipped with what we believe is a Nova-class energy core. Theoretical technology that our scientists have deemed impossible to stabilize." This revelation sent murmurs through the council. Admiral Krell's scales darkened. "If that's true, each of those small ships could potentially destroy a moon, or power an entire planet," countered Zrin. "Energy technology can be weaponized or harnessed for peace." Vex turned to the chamber entrance. "Bring in the humans. I think it's time we heard more about what they're offering, rather than focusing on what they might threaten." As Captain Reed entered with his officers, the council members studied them with new eyes. These weren't the primitive savages they had dismissed. They were representatives of a species that had not only survived their violent past, but had channeled that intensity into technological achievement that now rivaled or surpassed their own. Reed stood before them, his posture respectful but confident. "High Counselor, esteemed members of the Coalition, we're prepared to discuss terms for Earth's integration into galactic society, and the technological exchange that would benefit us all." The Grand Council chamber hummed with tension as Captain Reed laid out humanity's terms. Behind him, displayed on the massive viewing screen, rotated detailed schematics of human technological innovations, designs freely offered as a gesture of good faith. "Our Nova Core technology," Reed explained, gesturing to a complex diagram, "can be adapted for planetary power grids, eliminating energy scarcity for developing worlds in your coalition." Dr. Patel stepped forward, her movements deliberate in the station's lighter gravity. "Additionally, our medical advancements in cellular regeneration could benefit multiple species represented here." The Coalition's scientific advisor, a gelatinous being named Flux, studied the displays with increasing excitement. "These regeneration techniques They could extend lifespans across multiple species by decades. Admiral Krell remained skeptical. And what do humans want in return for these generous offerings? Reed faced the Admiral directly. A seat at the table, Admiral. Equal standing in the coalition. Access to interstellar trade routes. Cultural exchange. The same rights afforded to all coalition members. And if we refuse? Krell challenged. Then we leave peacefully, Reed replied evenly. Earth will forge its own path among the stars. But know this. The quarantine ends today regardless. We won't be caged. The quiet confidence in Reed's voice sent a ripple through the assembly. It wasn't a threat, simply a statement of fact. Counselor, Vex studied the humans carefully. You mentioned cultural exchange, yet much of your culture celebrates warfare. This concerns many members of our peaceful coalition. Commander Wilson stepped forward. With respect, Counselor, you've misinterpreted our art and entertainment. Yes, humans create stories about conflict. It's how we process our history and work through our darkest impulses without acting on them. Our literature, films, and games, exploring war, Dr. Patel added, have helped humanity maintain the longest period of global peace in our history. By confronting violence in fiction, we learn to avoid it in reality. This perspective clearly hadn't occurred to many council members, whose expressions ranged from thoughtful to surprised. Meanwhile, on the lower decks of the station, a different kind of exchange was taking place. The human vessel's engineer, Chief Miller, had been granted permission to help station technicians with an ongoing power regulation issue. The coalition engineers watched in amazement as Miller implemented a simple but elegant solution that had eluded them for months. It's just a different way of looking at the problem, Miller explained with a shrug. Humans are good at working with limited resources. We had to be. Back in the council chamber, the deliberation had turned to security concerns. These human ships, Admiral Krell persisted. They bypassed our most sophisticated detection systems. This represents a critical security breach. Reed nodded acknowledgement. Your detection systems are excellent, Admiral, but they rely on predictable scan patterns. We simply identified the gaps in coverage and timed our approaches accordingly. And you're willing to share this knowledge? To expose your own methods? Krell seemed incredulous. As coalition members, your security would be our security, Reed replied. We'd work together to develop better systems that benefit everyone. The station's communications suddenly activated. Reports were coming in from various coalition worlds where human vessels had been holding position. Local populations had initiated contact, curious about the mysterious visitors. Instead of panic, there was a growing sense of excitement across multiple planets as humans shared glimpses of their culture, music, and art with their galactic neighbors. They're making friends, Counselor Zrin observed, surprised. Dr. Lorne's gravity pad bobbed slightly as he processed this information. Fascinating. Despite our quarantine, they're showing no resentment toward coalition citizens. Only toward the policy itself. Vex turned to Captain Reed. You could have forced this issue militarily. Why didn't you? Reed's expression softened slightly. Because that's not the relationship we want with the galaxy, Counselor. Yes, humans can fight when necessary. Our history proves that. But we'd rather build than destroy. We'd rather learn than conquer. As the council members exchanged glances, something shifted in the chamber's atmosphere, from fear to cautious curiosity. The humans had not come as conquerors despite their clear technological advantage. They had come seeking partnership, and that perhaps more than their impressive ships or advanced technology gave the council reason to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity. 3 days later, the formal integration process began. The Galactic Coalition had voted, not unanimously, but with a clear majority, to end the quarantine of Earth and begin the process of accepting humanity as its 28th member species. The human delegation had expanded. Captain Reed remained as military liaison, while Earth had sent diplomats, scientists, and cultural representatives to begin the complex process of interstellar integration. Professor Alan Grant, Earth's leading xenolinguist, stood before an audience of coalition language specialists, explaining the remarkable human capacity for learning alien communication systems. Our planet contains over 7,000 distinct languages and dialects, he explained. This linguistic diversity has given humans a unique neuroplasticity when it comes to adapting to new communication forms. In another section of the station, human engineers were working alongside coalition technicians to integrate their NovaCore technology with existing systems. The process was revealing unexpected synergies between the technologies. "It's like they were designed to work together," marveled Technician Orb, his 3 appendages manipulating holographic controls as Chief Miller nodded approvingly. "Different paths to the same destination," Miller replied. "That's the beauty of science. The laws of physics are universal, even if our approaches to harnessing them differ." Admiral Krell, still uncomfortable with the rapid developments, conducted his own investigation. He cornered Commander Wilson in the station's observation lounge. 7 ships, he said without preamble. 7 ships should not have been enough to force this issue. Wilson sipped his drink, a coalition beverage he'd taken a liking to. "They weren't meant to force anything, Admiral. They were a demonstration." "Of power?" "Of presence," Wilson corrected. "Earth wanted the coalition to recognize that we're here, we're advanced, and we're not going away. But if you're asking whether those 7 ships represent the extent of Earth's fleet," he left the implication hanging. Krell's scales rippled. "How many?" "That information will be shared with Coalition Defense Command as part of our integration," Wilson replied diplomatically. "But I'll tell you this. Earth learned long ago not to reveal its full capabilities at once." Meanwhile, in the botanical gardens, Dr. Patel had attracted a crowd of diverse beings as she shared samples of Earth flora. The coalition botanists were particularly fascinated by certain plants' adaptive capabilities. "This species can lie dormant for decades, waiting for the right conditions," she explained, holding up a small seed. "Life on Earth evolved to be incredibly resilient." "Like humans themselves," observed a plant-based coalition member, their leaves rustling thoughtfully. On the diplomatic front, negotiations were proceeding with surprising smoothness. Ambassador Lee, Earth's chief diplomat, had impressed the coalition representatives with his comprehensive knowledge of their various cultures and customs, knowledge gleaned from decades of secret observation by Earth's deep space monitoring systems. "You knew about us long before we detected your response to our probes," Counselor Vex realized during a private meeting. Ambassador Lee nodded. "Earth's defensive systems have been monitoring deep space for centuries. We detected your exploration vessels long before you came close enough to observe us directly." "And you said nothing? Did nothing?" "We were cautious," Lee admitted. "First contact is a delicate matter. We wanted to learn more before revealing ourselves. Yet when you learned of the quarantine, that forced our hand," Lee acknowledged. "Earth wouldn't accept being caged, especially by those who had judged us without ever speaking to us. Not everyone was pleased with the developing alliance. A faction of coalition hardliners, led by representatives from the Prel Collective, continued to voice concerns about humanity's potential threat. They advanced too quickly, argued Delegate Morks in a fractious council session. Their adaptability makes them unpredictable, and their unity in the face of external challenges suggests a hive-like response that could become dangerously expansionist. Captain Reed, observing from the gallery, leaned toward Dr. Patel. "They're not entirely wrong," he whispered. "Nothing unites humans like an outside threat. Or an outside opportunity," she countered. "Look around. Our people are thriving here, learning, sharing. This is humanity at its best." As the debate continued, screens throughout the station displayed live feeds from various coalition worlds where human representatives had begun cultural exchange programs. Music, art, cuisine, humanity was sharing everything, holding nothing back. And in return, they were absorbing alien cultures with enthusiastic appreciation. It was becoming increasingly clear to the coalition that humans were not simply warriors who had built impressive ships. They were explorers, scientists, artists, and dreamers who had turned their competitive nature toward the stars. And the stars, it seemed, would never be the same again. The integration of Earth into the Galactic Coalition proceeded faster than anyone anticipated. Human adaptability, once feared as a military threat, proved to be their greatest diplomatic asset. Within weeks, human representatives had established relationships with all 27 member species, finding common ground with even the most xenophobic among them. Captain Reed stood on the observation deck of the station, watching as a human transport vessel docked alongside ships from a dozen different worlds. The sight still filled him with quiet pride. "Impressive, isn't it, Admiral?" Krell had approached silently, a talent of his species. Reed nodded. "A month ago, that human ship would have been fired upon for approaching this station. And now it delivers cultural attachés and trade negotiators," Krell observed. "The universe moves quickly." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. The station's long-range sensors had detected an anomaly at the edge of Coalition space, a massive energy signature unlike anything in their records. In the command center, representatives from multiple species gathered around display screens as data streamed in. "Whatever it is, it's big," reported Lieutenant Nexus, "and it's heading directly for Coalition territory." High Counselor Vex turned to Captain Reed. "Is this another human vessel? Something you neglected to mention?" Reed shook his head, his expression grave. "No, Counselor. This is unknown to us as well." The tension in the room shifted subtly. No longer humans versus Coalition, but all of them facing an unknown together. Dr. Lorne analyzed the incoming data. The energy signature suggests technology far beyond our current understanding. If it's a vessel, it's at least 20 times the size of our largest ships. "And its trajectory?" asked Admiral Krell. "At current speed, it will reach Coalition space within 3 days," Nexus confirmed. Ambassador Lee stepped forward. "The Coalition has protocols for first contact situations, I presume." Vex's crystalline form dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a frown. "Our protocols assume technological parity or advantage. If this entity possesses technology as advanced as these readings suggest, then we need a new approach," Reed finished. He turned to his communications officer. "Contact Earth. Request immediate deployment of the Horizon Fleet." The council chamber erupted in confusion. "Horizon Fleet?" Admiral Krell's scales shifted to a deep purple. Alarm. "What is this?" Reed met his gaze steadily. "The 7 ships we sent were our diplomatic flotilla, Admiral. The Horizon Fleet is our actual defense force." A stunned silence fell over the chamber. "How many vessels?" Vex finally asked. "Enough," Reed replied simply. "And they carry our most advanced defensive and communication technologies. If this unknown entity comes in peace, we'll establish contact. If not..." He left the implication hanging. Within hours, reports began coming in from the outer detection posts. Human vessels were appearing throughout Coalition space. Not 7, this time, but dozens. Each took up position near vulnerable Coalition worlds, creating a defensive network that hadn't existed before. In the station's strategic command center, human and Coalition officers worked side by side, integrating their defense systems. Commander Wilson led the effort, his experience with both technologies proving invaluable. "The unknown entity is maintaining course and speed," reported a Coalition tactical officer. "Still no response to communication attempts." Wilson nodded. "Keep broadcasting on all frequencies. Let's add Earth's first contact protocols to the transmission. Different mathematical sequences, binary code patterns." Ambassador Lee conferred quietly with Counselor Vex. "This situation is precisely why Earth sought integration with the Coalition. Alone, we're vulnerable. Together, we're stronger." Vex studied the human diplomat. "You anticipated this?" "Not this specific threat," Lee clarified. "But we've always known that the galaxy is vast and full of unknowns. Humanity's history taught us that isolation is ultimately unsustainable." On the military deck, Captain Reed and Admiral Krell reviewed the defensive formation displayed in the holographic tank. "Your ships have positioned themselves to absorb the first wave of any potential attack," Krell noted. "You're placing human vessels at the greatest risk." Reed nodded. "Earth is the newest member of the Coalition. We have much to prove." For the first time, Krell's posture relaxed slightly. "Perhaps we misjudged your species, Captain." "That's the thing about humans, Admiral," Reed replied with a slight smile. "We're full of surprises." As the hours passed, the mysterious entity continued its approach. Throughout Coalition space, humans and aliens worked together, preparing for whatever might come. Old prejudices were set aside in the face of a common unknown. And in that moment of unity, perhaps the greatest surprise was how quickly former adversaries could become allies when facing the vast mystery of the universe together. The countdown, reached its final hours. The unknown entity had maintained its direct course toward Coalition space, still unresponsive to all communication attempts. In strategic command centers across 27 worlds, military leaders prepared for possible conflict, while diplomatic corps stood ready to establish peaceful contact. Captain Reed had transferred to the flagship of the Human Horizon Fleet, the HSS Prometheus. From its bridge, he coordinated with Coalition forces while maintaining constant communication with Earth. All human vessels report ready status, Commander Wilson informed him. Defense systems aligned with Coalition protocols. Communication arrays calibrated for multi-species transmission. Reed nodded, studying the massive holographic display showing the combined fleet positions. The largest gathering of military might the Coalition had ever assembled. And still we may be outmatched, observed Admiral Krell, who had joined the Prometheus as the Coalition's military liaison. Perhaps, Reed acknowledged, but we'll face it together. On Station Epsilon, Ambassador Lee and High Counselor Vex observed the approaching entity through enhanced telescopic imagery. The object had finally come into visual range, revealing a structure of impossible proportions and alien geometry. It doesn't appear to be a conventional vessel, Dr. Lorne noted, his gravity pad hovering closer to the display. The configuration suggests it might be biological in nature. A living ship. Vex's crystalline form pulsed with interest. Or a colony organism, suggested Dr. Patel, who had been analyzing the visual data. Similar to coral structures on Earth, but adapted for space travel. The entity continued its approach, now just hours from crossing into Coalition territory. Throughout the combined fleet, final preparations were made. Weapons systems charged, shields raised to maximum capacity, evacuation protocols reviewed, and confirmed. Then, without warning, the entity stopped. "Confirm that reading," Reed ordered sharply. "Confirmed, Captain," replied the sensor officer. The entity has come to a complete halt at the exact boundary of Coalition space. A tense silence fell over the bridge. "Now that," Admiral Krell said quietly, "is deliberate." As if in response to his observation, the entity began to change. Its outer structure, previously solid and opaque, became semi-transparent, revealing complex internal systems that defied conventional understanding. "We're detecting energy fluctuations," reported the science officer. "It appears to be reconfiguring itself." Before their eyes, the massive entity transformed, sections folding and unfolding in geometrically impossible ways. When the transformation completed, it had formed a shape that resembled nothing so much as an enormous hand. Fingers extended toward Coalition space in what could only be interpreted as a gesture. "It's communicating," breathed Ambassador Lee from the station. "Non-verbal, symbolic communication." "But what does it mean?" Vex wondered. "A hand can gesture welcome or warn of danger. It can offer peace or deliver violence." Dr. Patel had been running the image through Earth's extensive xenobiology databases. In nearly every Earth culture, an extended hand is a universal greeting, an invitation to touch, to connect. Or it could be telling us to stop, countered Admiral Krell. Captain Reed studied the image thoughtfully. "There's one way to find out." He turned to his communications officer. "Prepare the Prometheus for approach. Minimum power, all weapon systems passive." Krell's scales flashed in alarm. "That's extremely risky, Captain." "Diplomacy often is, Admiral." Reed's voice was calm but resolute. "Someone has to take the first step." The decision reverberated through the combined fleet. On Station Epsilon, the council members watched with a mixture of concern and hope as the human flagship broke formation and began a slow, deliberate approach toward the entity. As the Prometheus drew closer, the entity's hand configuration shifted again, the fingers curling slightly as if preparing to receive something. "Continue approach," Reed ordered. "Broadcast all first contact protocols on all frequencies." The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, every being, human and alien alike, acutely aware of the historic moment unfolding around them. When the Prometheus reached a distance of 10,000 kilometers from the entity, something remarkable happened. A small portion of the entity separated from the main mass and moved toward them. a piece roughly the size of the human vessel itself. Defensive posture, Wilson suggested, but Reed shook his head. No. Hold position. Let it come. The separated fragment approached slowly, its structure shifting constantly as it moved. When it reached a distance of 1 kilometer, it stopped and began to emit complex patterns of light and energy. It's scanning us, the science officer reported. Non-invasive, information gathering only. Reed nodded. Let them look. We have nothing to hide. For several tense minutes, the fragment studied the Prometheus. Then, to everyone's amazement, it began to reconfigure itself again, this time taking on a rough approximation of the human vessel's shape. Mimicry, whispered Dr. Lorne from the station. A sophisticated form of communication. The entity's next action left even the scientists speechless. The fragment, now shaped like a crude version of the Prometheus, began to emit a signal. A perfect repetition of the first contact. Mathematical sequences humanity had been broadcasting. Captain Reed smiled. Open a channel to Station Epsilon and all Coalition worlds. I believe formal introductions are in order. As the channel opened, Reed stood, facing the view screen where the entity's fragment hovered before them. With a steady voice that carried to every corner of Coalition space, he spoke the words that would begin a new chapter in galactic history. On behalf of Earth and the Galactic Coalition, we welcome you to our stars. We come in peace and friendship, ready to learn and share. The entity's response came not in words, but in a symphony of light and energy that somehow conveyed a sense of ancient wisdom and newfound joy. First contact had been established, and humanity, the Coalition's newest and once most feared member, had been the bridge. 1 year later, Station Epsilon had been transformed. What was once a military and diplomatic outpost now served as the central hub for the most ambitious xenological study in galactic history. The entity, now known as the Collective by mutual agreement, had established permanent contact with the Coalition through a series of biologically engineered nodes that allowed for increasingly sophisticated communication. Captain Reed, now Admiral Reed, stood in the newly constructed Nexus Chamber, where representatives from all Coalition species gathered to interact with the Collective's primary communication node. The chamber hummed with the soft biological rhythms of the alien, technology that had been seamlessly integrated with Coalition systems. Still hard to believe sometimes, said Admiral Krell, joining Reed at the observation window. Their relationship had evolved from wary respect to genuine friendship over the months of working together. Reed nodded. That the most advanced species we've encountered turned out to be a collective intelligence of microscopic organisms that developed space travel before developing verbal language. Yes, it stretches the imagination. I meant the changes in the Coalition, Krell clarified. A year ago, we feared humanity would destabilize galactic peace. Now you're our primary ambassadors to a species that redefines our understanding of intelligence itself. Below them, in the chamber's central communication pit, Dr. Patel worked alongside Coalition scientists, interpreting the complex light patterns and energy signatures that constituted the Collective's language. Her xenobiology expertise had proven invaluable in establishing meaningful dialogue with the entity. The Collective has existed for millions of years, she explained to a group of new arrivals. They evolved in the space between stars, feeding on cosmic radiation and developing a hive consciousness that spans enormous distances. What we initially perceived as a single entity is actually trillions of organisms working in perfect harmony. The gathered scientists listened in fascination as Dr. Patel continued. They've been observing our galaxy for centuries, but hesitated to make contact until they detected something new. The emergence of humanity into Coalition space. Our unique approach to first contact interested them. In another section of the station, Commander Wilson, now Captain Wilson of his own vessel, led a joint Human-Coalition security briefing. The Collective had shared information about potential threats lurking in unexplored regions of the galaxy, prompting a comprehensive review of defense strategies. The Collective doesn't think in terms of war, Wilson explained, but they understand the concept of existential threats. They've mapped phenomena and entities throughout this galactic quadrant that could pose dangers to biological life as we know it. On Earth, the changes were equally profound. The integration with the Coalition had accelerated technological development, while cultural exchange had enriched human society in unexpected ways. Art, music, philosophy, all had been transformed by contact with alien perspectives. Ambassador Lee had established a coalition embassy in what was once the United Nations headquarters in New York. There, representatives from 27 alien species worked alongside humans to coordinate Earth's expanding role in galactic affairs. Humanity's greatest strength, Lee remarked during an interview with global media, has turned out to be not our technology or our military capacity, but our adaptability. We learn, we integrate, we evolve, faster than any species the coalition has encountered. Back on Station Epsilon, Admiral Reed and Admiral Krell concluded their inspection tour in the newly established Academy of Interspecies Understanding, a joint educational initiative where young beings from all coalition worlds, including Earth, studied together. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you breached our sector a year ago?" Krell asked as they watched students of various species engaged in collaborative projects. Reed smiled. "I hoped for acceptance. I didn't dare dream of this level of integration." "Your 7 ships changed the course of galactic history," Krell mused. "Not the ships," Reed corrected. "The decision to reach out rather than strike out. The willingness to risk peace instead of defaulting to war." He paused, watching. A human child working intently alongside a young Deltarian. That's the real strength of humanity that the Coalition feared. Our capacity for rapid, transformative change. But change isn't always destructive. Sometimes it's exactly what's needed. In the Nexus Chamber, the collective's communication node pulsed with new patterns of light. Patterns that Dr. Patel and her team had learned to recognize as expressions of curiosity and anticipation. The ancient entity, having watched civilizations rise and fall across cosmic timescales, had found something new and fascinating in the curious symbiosis developing between humans and the Coalition. The universe was vast and largely unknown. Threats and wonders alike waited in the unexplored darkness between stars. But for the first time, humanity faced that vast unknown not as isolated planetary dwellers, not as feared outsiders, but as integral members of a galactic community. Community that had learned, somewhat to its surprise, that the warning that once caused such fear, "Human war vessel has breached the sector," had ultimately heralded not destruction, but a new era of unity, discovery, and hope. As Admiral Reed gazed out at the stars beyond the station, he reflected that humanity's most enduring legacy might not be the wars of their past, or even the technological marvels of their present. It might instead be their unique ability to transform potential enemies into allies, to build bridges where others saw only chasms. And in a galaxy full of ancient wonders and unknown dangers, perhaps that was the most valuable contribution of all.